Back. Are we waiting for Josh?
Yep. Just waiting for Josh. He and I just talked on the phone. He's just a minute or two behind, just getting connected up.
Okay,
I'll let you
thank
know in
you.
a second. You're welcome.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
From Barbara Higgins having trouble logging in, so maybe you could reach out to her and see if there's anything you can do to help her get into the meeting.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you. Those of you who have joined the meeting, we have not yet commenced. We have commenced to commence, but we are waiting just to confirm that our live stream is streaming. So we will be starting shortly.
I'll call Barb, but Kathleen, Josh is ready to go.
All set?
Yep. I'll call Barb, but Josh is ready to go.
Okay, so
Okay,
Jenny, do
great.
you want to wait for Barbara? Do you want to?
I'm going to go ahead. I'm
Okay.
sure that Jack can help
Yeah.
get her in.
Okay.
By the time I
All
get
right.
done reading the emergency
Great.
meeting statement.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
saying everyone, it is August 10th, 2020. I'm Jennifer Patterson, president of the Concord School Board, and I'm calling to order a special meeting of the Concord School Board to consider the adoption of policy 415, our sexual harassment reporting and grievance process. And of the Concord School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with Governor's Emergency Order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, the board is authorized to meet electronically. And again, the business we intend to conduct today is necessary due to the need to adopt policy number 415, our Title IX sexual harassment reporting and grievance process. A link to the draft policy, SAU website, SAU 8 website, and any comments on the policy be submitted via email at concordinfo@sau8.org. For those who are watching on the live stream or have joined, I wanted to briefly note our rescheduled monthly board meeting will be at 6 p.m. on August 17th. That will be the meeting where we conduct our regular monthly business. That business did not occur on August 3rd due to technical difficulties. So at the 17th meeting, we will consider the anti-racism petition as well as topics related to in-person instruction that were not decided during our August 6th meeting on school reopening. So that includes sports, CRTC, preschool, and IEP services. We've received many emails, we've the input on those topics, and we look forward to talking about them on August 17th. I also wanted to note that the district is actively working on a plan to resume in-person board meetings, and we do expect to resume meeting in person by the time that students return to school. What we're needing to do is to provide a space that allows for both remote in-person participation of board members and of members of the public, consistent with public health and safety protocols. So for this meeting, continue to have no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously in accordance with the governor's emergency order. We are providing public access to the meeting by telephone as well as through Microsoft Teams. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously through Microsoft Teams, and the public can contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, the meeting by dialing the phone number 925-391-1169 with reference ID of 494-739-791, or by the SAU8.org website. The meeting is being broadcasted contemporaneously on CCTV's education channel, which is Comcast Channel 6, and also on www.youtube.com/ConcordNH. Recording of the meeting will be posted on CCTV's website. Please note that those listening on the education channel may want to turn up the volume on their television. The volume for this channel may be lower than for other channels. We did give notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to join using Microsoft Teams or telephonically. The meeting and pertinent instructions were posted on the website of the board at sau8.org more than 24 hours and are highlighted at the top of the website. The public can alert us if they have problems with access during the meeting. If anyone has a problem, call 603-513-9008. And in the event that is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. So I want to start by taking a roll call and determining what board members are present. Please note that all members will be participating remotely, and any votes that are taken during the meeting will be taken by roll call vote. So when each member states their presence, please also state whether anyone is in the room with you, as this is required under the right to know law. Please, everyone, mute your microphone when not speaking and wait to be recognized. Ms. Cannon, are you present?
I am present. I'm alone.
Great, thank you, Ms. Cannon. Mr. Croto, are you present?
I am present and I am alone.
Thank you, Mr. Croto. Mr. Crush, are you present? I believe that Mr. Crush will not be present. Ms. Higgins, are you present? So Ms. Higgins, I hope will be joining us soon. Mr. Parker, are you present?
I'm present and I'm alone.
Great, thank you, Mr. Parker. Ms. Poinier, are you present?
I'm alone.
Great, thank you, Ms. Poinier. Mr. Richards, are you present?
I am present and I'm alone.
Great, thank you, Mr. Richards. Ms. Smith, are you present?
I am present and I am alone.
Great, thank you, Ms. Smith. I'm Jennifer Patterson. I am present and I am on. Ms. Murphy, do you want to introduce the district staff who are present in the meeting?
We have two of our members present this evening. Our business administrator, Jack Dunn, is with us, along with Karen Fisher Anderson, our safety security consultant around this very important issue that we're going to discuss tonight. So appreciate having Karen with us tonight.
Great. Thank you so much. Just briefly review the agenda. Again, it is focused on the sexual harassment grievance reporting policy, which would be a new policy for the district. I want to briefly talk about the context of this policy, the policy adoption process, and our plans for looking at other policies. Then I'm going to ask board member Gina Cannon, who's the vice chair of the Communication to Policy Committee, along with Karen Fisher Anderson, who is our compliance and student safety officer, as well as our Title IX coordinator, to present the policy. We then will review any comments that have been collected via email to concordinfo@sau8.org, and then we'll move forward to a vote on the proposed policy. And given the timing of this particular policy, this policy is required due to a federal rule that takes effect on Friday. So we will be suspending the requirement under our board policies to have a first and a second reading. So that does require a 2/3 vote of the board. But it's something that we've done in the past for other policies that needed to be adopted on an expedited. So I just wanted to talk quickly. Oh, yes, go ahead, Gina.
Barb is still having difficulty joining us.
Jack, where do we stand in terms of join? Any update on that?
He may be working with her.
Okay.
Let me text him.
Okay.
Yeah, she just texted that she can't even call in.
Um,
Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to go ahead with my summary. I hope that she is able to join because we definitely want her input on this policy. So just briefly, the district has really focused on student safety policies since last April. We had a real concerted effort through our Communications and Policy Committee and then through a number of community forums. So, oh good, I see Barb joining.
Bob
So
just came in.
excellent. So starting in April and May of 2020, our Communications and Policy Committee looked at what policies we should look at in terms of sexual harassment reporting, child abuse reporting, and other policies relevant to student safety. Then in July, we had 2 community forums to gain input on policies from both experts and community members in 5 areas. The first being sexual harassment, students and reporting child abuse. The second being student conduct, student safety and violence prevention. The third being safe schools and the police in the schools. The fourth being communication of concerns and complaints. And the fifth being professional standards, sexual harassment employees. Then at our August monthly board meeting last year, we did adopt certain policies on an expedited basis that included policy 431, national expectations, policy 432, reporting child abuse and neglect, policy 521, sexual harassment, policy 539, student safety and violence prevention, and policy 812, communication of complaints about district employees. Then at our September meeting, we adopted some additional changes to our sexual harassment policy for students to make it the same as the staff sexual harassment policy that we had adopted in August. September of 2019, our policy committee further reviewed a number of policies that had been discussed at the August and September board meetings. And in October of 2019, we made a few changes to those policies. Then in December, we moved forward in a concerted fashion on policy 437, employee-student relations, which had been, the board had decided not to go forward with that pending more input from both students and employees. And in December and January, we received a tremendous amount of input, both from our student representative, Alice Richards, who is on this call, and also from our administrators on staff input. And so there were a number of suggestions that were made, changes to the policy. That policy went forward to the board for first reading in February and then was adopted in March. And so at that time, what we had contemplated was that in April, we would circle back and look at a number of policies. That unfortunately did not happen due to COVID-19. And so what we're doing today is moving forward with a policy that Karen Fisher-Anderson has done a tremendous on in conjunction with the New Hampshire School Board Association and the school attorneys group. She has modified the model policy to include some considerations that, in her judgment, are consistent with the direction that Concord has been, that we've done over the past year. So we are hoping to move forward with a policy that first applies with the federal requirements that take effect, continues in the direction that we have been proceeding. Then finally, we have a policy committee scheduled for November 16th, at which we will continue circling back with the policies that we had previously wanted to look at. So that is kind of the context in which we are looking at this policy today. And now I will turn it over to Gina Cannon, who is our Vice Chair of Communications and Policy. That committee did recommend that this policy go forward to the board for consideration and adoption. So Gina, go ahead, please.
Gina, I think are you muted, Gina?
Yes, of course I was. So the policy that we're all looking at, 415, is primarily the part of the policy that's in black is the required policy that was put forth under BOS's new requirements that have to be put in place by the 14th. I believe they have to be in place by the 14th. So I know that Bill Phillips a massive job trying to take the information that Betsy DeVos required and put it through the New Hampshire School Board Association. They came out with a model policy, and then he tried to make that as readable and as comprehensive as he possibly could. And I don't want to take anything away from his work. That policy is 22 pages long. This is a really, really unwieldy, non-lawyer, well, I don't even think it's lawyer friendly. It's not a particularly friendly document, but it lays out the required policy and procedure for someone who's making a very, very narrow type of claim. It's not any type of, it's not just any discrimination. It's not any, it's only with specific reference to sexual harassment. So any other type of discrimination, any other type of inappropriate behavior, it simply doesn't fall under this particular policy and procedure. My sense and my from hearing on the grapevine, that this really was meant more for colleges and their Title IX procedure, but it applies to us as well. So the meat of this policy has to do with how someone chooses to make a report of the sexual harassment, and depending on what type of report or formal complaint or whatever methodology they choose to go through, there is a particular procedure and policy that this policy lays out. So if you want to make an informal complaint, there's a particular procedure to follow. If you want to make a formal complaint, there's a particular procedure to follow. If you want to opt out all of that and go to the Office of Civil Rights, you can opt out of everything, and there's a procedure to follow for that. As I say, it's not, in my opinion, it's not terribly layman friendly. It's not even particularly lawyer friendly. It is long, it's difficult. I think what Karen has done has been invaluable to adding sort of a Concord feel to it. She's tried to make it a little, to make it as user-friendly as it can be. Use real person language to examples. For example, what does retaliation mean? What does it look like? So she's put in a definition. What does severe sexual harassment, what does that mean? What does that look like? So she's given an example, things to make it a little easier for use, so that when somebody looks to this policy, which is required to be published all over the place, it's got to be in the student handbook, it's got to be with the teachers, it's got to go to the parents, it should be website, it should be everywhere. When someone goes to it and says, okay, I think that I'm being stalked. What does stalking look like? Well, Karen has gone to the New Hampshire statutes, looked up what stalking is in our state, and put that into the policy where it wasn't before. It just said, you're not allowed to stalk. Well, what does that mean? Well, so Karen has put the information into the policy so that you don't have to flip around. You don't have to go from the policy to the RSAs. You don't have to go to the law. You don't have to look up other definitions. There's a section where it says, you know, you could talk to the Title IX coordinator. The SBA policy, that's just sort of where it leave it. Karen has gone and said, okay, so I am the Title IX coordinator, and this is how you text me, and this is how you email me, and this is how you call me, and this is where my office is. So that if someone has an issue and they go to this event, all of the contact information is there. You don't, she's tried to make it as one-stop, user-friendly as possible. My opinion is that it's not a terribly user-friendly document just because of the way it is. My sense, I mean, we don't have a choice. We have to approve it. This is part of the federal law that we're required to do. I don't like it. My personal opinion is that it will tend to make victims less willing to come forward, because this document, proposed offenders have always had due process rights, but this lays out in a significantly more substantive way what the alleged offender's rights are, and gives a lot more time frame and a lot more places for them to be able to interject their explanations / that's why I don't like it. I think it makes it less like victims to want to step forward. Nevertheless, it's the federal law that we're stuck with. So if you look at the document, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it. I don't know, you know, if people look at it, have read it, have tried to read it. The red is what Karen has put in, and I think it's a great, great addition to the policy, as I say, to try and make it more user-friendly. You may be get the little yellow highlights. Those refer to, I think, where it says, you know, section 2B below. That's pretty obvious. It means we'll circle around and explain that later on in the policy. We'll get to that. Other piece that's a little confusing is when you see highlighted something that looks like, if you're looking on page 1, bracket, asterisk, asterisk, bracket, AC. The New Hampshire School Board Association numbers their school policies entirely different from us. What that means in our policy is that we have not yet tracked down which policies that one refers to. And when it goes up on the board and it goes up on the website and it goes into the handbooks, that will actually read something like Concord Policy 412, number 578, number 631, etc. Oh, Lyndon looks like she wants to say something.
Thank you. Just briefly, the highlighted words that say section, etc., those are highlighted partially because they may change based on additions that Karen may have made, and so we left those marked, and once adopted, we would correct any of those that would change and the highlighting would come off. Thank you.
Right. But the things that if you look at them that don't really make sense, the school board policy AC-E, that's a reference to the New Hampshire School Board Association policy. We've got to track down which our policy is and put the right number in there, and then that highlighting will come off. The other issue is that we have policies that we have already approved in place, and some of those will need to be changed because they do not comport with the federal policy that we are now required to adopt. For example, one of the policies that we have say that the superintendent is the resource, wait, somebody correct me here. They're the
human rights officer.
Thank you, Karen. The human rights officer, but that by federal law cannot be. It has to be the Title IX coordinator. So we will have to go to the policy where we state that the superintendent is the human rights officer and change that. Does anyone have any additional questions? That's a lot in I don't know how many minutes that was.
Thank you, Gina. And Gina, and just to add, you know, all of those changes that we have to make to the other policies, that's one of the things that we'll look at the September meeting, probably among others.
Lyndon, I think, is your hand up, Lyndon, or was that a
No, sorry, I just didn't.
leftover?
Okay, sorry.
Does anyone else have any questions about this particular policy? For me or for Karen? Oh, Kathleen.
Yeah, I think it's going to be critical that when Karen and I go out into the buildings, work with all of the groups, you know, whether it's our bus drivers, whoever, right? And we go over this policy. We will try to develop some synthesis, because you're right. Some of the legalese, if you will, of the language it can be confusing. I mean, I've read that so many times now, so after a while you get it. But we will break it down so that there's a more it's sort of a synopsis of what the intent of the language is in that particular section. So whether it's a definition or whether it's whether it's severe, pervasive, you know, some of the that we use in there in the definitions, we'll break those down, because I think that's really important. We have to do a really good job at getting the information out to our entire staff, and that's one of the ways that we'll do that.
Sorry, Karen, and then Tom.
Sure. I just want to echo, first of all, thanks for letting me be a part of the meeting this evening, but I also want to echo what Kathleen just said and stress that this is not a one and done. We can post the policy and say, hey, we've complied, it's up there on us. I have a lot of ideas and objectives over the next couple of months on, you know, how to get the substance of this policy across to the folks that are affected by it. And for those of you who've had a chance to read through this, and I apologize for its length, this is applicable to all students and all employees and all third-party contractors within the Concord School District. But what I would like to do, in addition to just working on the written policy, I've come up with some initiatives. I want to do a 10 to 15 minute video. I'll probably have to talk fast, but I want to put that on a website as well, where we have our policy for those folks who, you know, don't have the time or the inclination, or maybe the reading ability in all cases, to explain the policy verbally. I also want to follow up with frequently asked questions and answers for those that I think are going to be the most commonly asked questions. Just a while ago for kind of a roadmap, if you will, a flow chart. And so I'm working on one of those so we can have that on the website as well. And I can't concur more with Kathleen on the stressing the point that it's about awareness and training. I hope to be out with the parents. I hope to be in the classroom with the kids. I've already done a lot of training this summer on the Title IX sort of overview of all of this. And it's really important that I continue that, and I do train the employees, especially in the school district, because there is liability here to them in a legal sense if they fail to report. Gina's right in that Title IX in this particular policy with regard to sexual harassment was written a lot towards colleges and universities. But for the first time, there is also a lot of applicability for K through 12. And so it will be vital for me and Kathleen and every, you know, the leadership, if you will, to make sure that our employees are aware that, you know, not only do they have an obligation, a mandatory reporting obligation for abuse and neglect, once they have actual notice, and that's defined in the policy as well, they have a responsibility to report. And it's clear in here that if they fail to meet that responsibility, then there are disciplinary actions that can be taken. So it's a long way of saying that this is just the start. Please don't think that I just helped write this long policy and customed it to a thing. We got to get out and walk the walk, speak the speak, if you will, and you know, make training and awareness a large part of forward. The only other thing I'd like to say before there are any questions is, when I was working with the small group of folks on the New Hampshire School Board model policy, You know, I was pleased to be part of that. And then I sat, you know, separately and I started thinking about Concord School District and how we don't just want to be in compliance. We want the gold standard. And so some of my changes in here, and I hope we'll get some feedback on them, take the model policy and just take it a little bit further. As Gina said, I think it is so important to have a one-stop shop document. Yes, it's 24 pages, but they don't have to try and figure out who the heck the Title IX coordinator is. They got my cell phone, they've got my email, they know both of my office locations, they've got a mailing address. There'll be posters in every single school within the district. So, you know, that's going to be really as important to get the word out. But the things that I did in the red was just to take it a little bit further, because as Gina said, even harassment in the 3 different types. It then gets into, you know, severe, pervasive, offensive, and you're reading that and you're already falling asleep. Severe, and what does the policy is supposed to be written towards students, parents, educators, and everyone else, and that was a challenge. That's why I went a little further on our definition section, because the regulators are extremely heavy in definitions. And if you don't know who the recipient is, for example, that's us, we're the school board or the school. If you don't know who that is, then when you're reading the regulations, it doesn't make much sense. We also, you know, I also tried to make, Kathleen had a great idea last time we went over this policy, and she said, you know, it's going to be frustrating and complicated and scary enough. What about for those who speak English or are hearing impaired or have other needs? So we have an accommodation section in our policy that says, you know what, we're gonna go that extra length. If somebody needs that extra help in coming forward and making a report or filing a formal complaint, we will be there. Okay. We need to be proactive and not reactive. And I believe that accommodation section will be really helpful in meeting that objective. Supportive measures, those are defined there. Ours go on a little bit longer. There's about 4 other things that we can provide students and employees, whether or not they decide to file a formal complaint. This policy is meant to put support measures in place to help those who believe honestly and have come forward and said, hey, I feel like I have been harassed. And then and again, not to beat a dead horse, but I also, you know, there's a bypass provision in there that says, well, hey, you know, they're going to students and some parents who are going to say, yeah, you know what, I don't think the school district's going to do it for me. I want to go directly to the Office of Civil Rights, which is their right to do. And so again, I've given them the phone number. I've given them the address. They don't have to go and try and find the numbers and the email addresses. It's all right there for them. So as I said, there's a lot of, I am more than willing, if any of you have any questions that you want to ask me offline, please send me an email, give me a call, why I put stuff in that I put in, or if you find some of it is just too long or not necessary, I'm not a shrinking rose either. So something that the district is really proud of, and I want our to take it the step beyond just compliance. So thank you, everybody.
Okay, Tom, Jen, and then Barb. Tom?
Hi, thank you. I went away for a second, sorry. But it was technological and not mental or emotional. So anybody who knows me from my days on the communication committee knows that I love brevity and I love policies that are user friendly so that any one of our constituents can look them up and figure out what they said. 20 pages is a big, so I love the idea that you're going to be teaching about this and perhaps making a video posters. I applaud that. It's going to need to be. I mean, it's just so much information. But I think, as I said maybe a little earlier, it's also a part of changing the culture of making sure that people feel like they know not only how to report an incident, but that they're feeling okay about reporting an incident. So I think I think the other thing that we need to make sure we do is to evaluate it and reevaluate it and keep it sort of a fluid document. We know that we've got it perfect. I don't know when Betsy DeVos sent out her note that we needed to get this done before we have 1, 2, or 3 readings. But regardless of that, we're going to get it done. It is done. But I think that we just need to be sure that we say, hey, you know what, in a month or 2, let's evaluate, make sure that this thing is working the way we think it should be working. All of our teaching is being the way it's supposed to be done. And we feel secure that parents and kids, as well as the policy. And that's all I wanted to say, and thank you.
Yep, Tom, I think those are great points. And I think that one of the ways, a measure of success maybe, is I know we survey the seniors at the end of the year. Maybe we survey some parents and we survey, other audiences. And you know what? It sounds people know who the Title IX is and how to reach them, then the communication has started. So those are kinds of easy things to follow up on. So I can't afraid to, insert myself into asking to be part of training sessions or be part of classroom instruction and those kinds of things. So point well, we do need to make sure we're honest with ourselves and that it's successful. Otherwise, it's not worth the paper it's written on.
Right. And I certainly do appreciate the work that you and Gina have put into this, as well as Kathleen.
Jenny and then Barb.
Great. Thank you, Gina. I wanted to echo what Tom said and just to say thank you so much, Karen, for all of your work on this. I went into the Communications and Policy Committee meeting on July 29th thinking, oh, it's really too bad that we have to adopt this policy that is less victim friendly. And a little frustrated by that, but by the time I got out of the meeting, I realized that, Karen, due to your efforts, this actually moves us even farther in the direction that we had been moving. I really appreciate the specificity that you added to the policy, both in terms of the definitions and having contact information, having the other resources for victims in the policy. I think that's important. And yes, it is long and it doesn't meet our brevity standard, but I think in this circumstance, it's the right thing to do. So I just wanted to say thank you.
And Barb and then Jim.
So I want to say the same thing. This is a pretty tender subject for me, this, whole thing. And if we need to have a 24-page policy, sexual harassment and assault, et cetera, is probably the policy that would have that many pages because there's so much trickiness to this. And I agree, everything that's in red, which is you, Karen, I guess, as a victim of this very type of thing that we're trying to have policies for, this to me reads like a doc that tells me my story will be believed, which is probably the hardest part for them, especially before anything's been done for them. The fact that there's contact names, that the contact names aren't just the officials at school, all these little things that maybe seem extraneous or to some really, really ease my mind. And I would have to agree, Kathleen, I love that your thought was to make this an ongoing educational thing and understandable for everyone, regardless of their intellectual ability or language or whatever. It just adds credibility to the fact that we're a district that will listen to students and teachers as well. So I'm just giving you a thumbs up. I really appreciate the work. It's not easy stuff.
Thank you.
Jim.
Thank you. Thank you for the tremendous amount of work I can obviously see went into this. My question's pretty simple. Any of the processes or opportunities that we put in place last year for people to notify us, does this new requirement limit us or require us to do any additional? I'm curious of what changes we may need to do.
No, to answer your question, there's still other policies that are in place. Remember, if I may, this is so tailored to just sexual harassment under Title IX that affects a student or an employee's ability to participate or take part in educational programs or activities. Okay, so it's so narrowly tailored. The amount of time and effort and expense they went to just dealing with harassment, although it does deal with gender gender identity and gender orientation. But with regard to the other reporting requirements, no. And I am a big proponent of, and we even put in the safeguarding memo in here, we still have obligations. You know, if it's a sexual assault, we got to notify Concord Police. That's part of our memorandum with Concord Police, and part of the safeguarding policy as well. As I said, DCYF, you know, if it's abuse or neglect, if it involves an educator, we have to go to the New Hampshire Department of Education. So it adds the responsibility to the definition of actual notice for K through 12 means all employees. And that's why I really want to get out there and beat the drum and say, hey, that's you. If you're getting a paycheck from the district, that's you. So if you're sitting at home and your son has a sleepover, starts talking about some teacher that sexually harassed him, notice. So we have an obligation now that has come forward for me to reach out, and that's the proactive versus, well, it's kind of reactive because we just heard about it, but I'm not going to wait for a student, even if I know something's going on, I'm not going to wait for that student to come around and knock on my door and say, hey, I'd like to maybe make a report or talk about a complaint. I'm going to go out, student or that employee, if we can have a conversation and sit in a quiet place, victim friendly, and just say, you know, here's what I've heard. Do you want to talk about it? And here are the processes that are available. So it's a long-winded way to say that there's an additional reporting responsibility, but one of my obligations as your Title IX coordinator is to make sure not only do we comply with what's in this policy, but we also comply with notifying the Concord Police Department when appropriate. And as I said, DCYF and also DOE. So does that answer your question?
Partially, but I also want to make sure that we still have the hotlines, the tip boxes, for lack of a better way, and that student, faculty, staff, anybody can still anonymously let us know about things, and that there are avenues that are really easy for them to be able to discern, and that this new directive coming from the doesn't change that.
It doesn't, still in effect. And in fact, I put in our policy that we encourage reporting. First of all, we don't just prohibit sexual harassment. I say in this policy, we want you to come forward, we want you to report. Okay, so please, we encourage them to do that. And so also with regard to the suggestion boxes and we've already had one come in, believe it or not on a sexual harassment, but we have the website where people can make a report online.
Right.
So absolutely, those are in existence and those will continue. I don't care if they write it on a napkin. You know, they can get it to me any way they want. They can get it to any employee in the district. Just let it report out there, and that's when we have an obligation, we the school district, to respond and go looking for the information.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
But
Very
Karen,
Yes.
there is a provision that may not be the anonymous section, because a lot of the rights are laid out for the the alleged perpetrator. It may not be always possible to keep the person anonymous.
Excellent point.
Because they have due process rights.
That's right. And so what happens is, let's say we have a complainant come in and say, you know, this has been going on, but I don't want to be the one to make the report. I, as the Title IX coordinator, have the ability to sign out a complaint as the Title IX coordinator. If we do a safety risk analysis, and let's say this person that the complainant is naming is somebody I'm familiar with. I've heard there's a pattern here, you know, the name, or there's been repeat, or let's say weapon involved, or it's a severe sexual assault. I can say to that complainant, okay, I understand you don't want to be the complainant here in the report. I understand that. So what I could do then with the superintendent's agreement is I sign out the report and we go forward. What I have to do, and what I put in the policy here, is we still have to manage the expectation of that complainant and say, I am going to respect your anonymity as much as I can, but you're right. The respondent has due process rights here. They need to know who the accuser is. And even if I can't use her or him, a complainant is, we can still go forward if we have other avenues there. Unfortunately, Gina, as you know, Sometimes you don't have enough and you can't go forward, but at least we're managing the expectations. And I would always tell that complainant, if I'm going to sign out a complaint afterwards, if they've said, I don't want to go forward, I want it to be anonymous, you know, I just don't want to, I would still call them in and put them on notice. You don't want to go forward. I'm going to go forward in my official capacity, and I don't want that to be a surprise to that person. So,
Right. But you can't always protect somebody's anonymity, even if they want it.
correct. It's going to be on a case by case basis. I understand what you're saying. Yep.
But if someone put an anonymous report, didn't sign it, just sent a message to you, you would still look into it, right, Karen?
Absolutely. And I'm going to be, one of my duties and responsibility is the record keeping and the data collection. So if I see a familiar pattern, your name, it's sort of that see something, say something, you know, I'm going to be documenting those things, Jim. So yes.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Yep, and I couldn't think of it when you asked me before, but we still have the student quick tip protocol. Yes, nothing changes there. Those assets will still be available.
Anyone else? Comments from the board?
Can I, Gina, one quick thing, I got to shout out to Lyndon. I met her the other day. She's been awesome on this. Sort of like 4 iterations of this policy. And then of course I came in and said, hey, you know, I'd like to implant about 250 ideas. And she literally spent about 7 hours with me sitting there typing them in and put this together for you all. So shout out to Lyndon. Thank you for all the help.
Thank you, Lyndon.
Lyndon's awesome.
Yes, she is.
Well, and now she wants to say something.
No, I was just hand down, head up, saying thank you. That's all.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Comments from the board? Comments from? We're not taking comments from the public. We're just asking them to email them.
So I think Lyndon actually was going to monitor, right? So what we posted on the website and said at the outside of the meeting was email any comments on this specific policy to Concord. So I will ask Lyndon whether she received any comments on that line.
There are no comments specific to this policy tonight.
Okay.
Do you want me to hand things back over to you, Jen?
Sure. I think that what we'll do, thank you so much, Gina. That was really helpful. And thank you, Karen and Kathleen as well. So as I think I said at the outset, due to the fact that the federal rule takes effect on Friday, we're moving forward on an expedited basis, and that requires us to suspend the requirement of a first and second reading, which is required under the board's policy 141. And doing that requires a 2/3 vote of. So and that's required under policy 143. So I think the first motion that I would like to entertain with respect to this policy is a motion to suspend the first and second reading requirement under policy that 141 and 143.
I'll make that motion.
Great. So moved by Gina. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. So moved by Gina, seconded by. And unless there's any discussion, I do not see any hands raised. I will call the roll on suspending the first and second reading. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Ms. Cannon votes aye. Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Croto votes aye. Mr. Crush, I believe here. Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins votes aye. Mr. Parker?
He's here.
Mr. Parker, I see you here, but your microphone is muted, I think. Mr. Parker, can you hear us? Can you unmute and vote? Well, let me going. Hopefully he'll get to be able to speak. Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier votes aye. Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Mr. Richards votes aye. Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Smith's aye. Mr. Parker, I'm calling you again just to see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I do see you here. Well, Ms. Patterson votes aye, and that is 7-0, which is a 2/3 vote of the board for suspending the first and second reading requirement. And I'm sorry that we're not able to hear Ms. Parker, Mr. Parker, sorry. But hopefully we'll be able to get you back on. So I think the next motion would be to adopt policy 415 as it was posted on the website. Is there a board member who'd like to make that motion?
I'll make it. Or Tom, go ahead.
Well, Gina, you were sort of an author in there. Why don't you make it?
Okay, whatever works.
Okay, so moved by Gina, seconded by Tom.
Sure, let's do that.
Okay. So the motion is to adopt policy 415 as it was posted on the website. Any discussion? I do not see any hands. So I will call the roll. Ms. Cannon.
Aye.
Ms. Cannon votes aye. Mr. Croto.
Aye.
Mr. Croto votes aye. Mr. Crush is not here. Ms. Higgins.
Aye.
Ms. Higgins votes aye. Mr. Parker. Mr. Parker is still muted. Ms. Poinier.
Aye.
Ms. Poinier votes aye. Mr. Richards.
Aye.
Mr. Richards votes aye. Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Smith votes aye. And Jennifer Patterson votes aye. The motion to adopt the policy passes on a 7-0 vote. So we did not have a vote from Mr. Parker or Mr. Crush. Mr. Crush is not here. So then the last, and I guess it's a bit belt and suspenders, but just in case, I was looking at the policies and I want to make sure that we get this in place. So there, in case there's anything wrong with our procedures, I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt policy 415 as it was posted on the site as an emergency policy under policy 141. That also requires a 2/3 of the board. So that way we will ensure that we have it in place when the rule takes effect on Friday. So is there someone who'd be willing to make that motion?
I'll make it 3 for 3.
Okay, thank you, Gina. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
So it's moved by Gina, seconded by Tom. And again, the motion is to adopt policy 415 as an emergency policy under policy 141. And seeing any hands raised, so I will call the roll. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Ms. Cannon votes aye. Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Croto votes aye. Mr. Crush? Not here, sorry. Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins, I think that was an aye. Was that an aye?
Yes.
Great, thank you. You broke up a little. I want to make sure I get the right vote. Mr. Parker? Mr. Parker does not seem to be voting. Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier votes aye. Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Mr. Richards votes aye. Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Smith votes aye. And Jennifer Patterson votes aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have also adopted policy 415 as an emergency policy on a vote of 7-0 roll call vote. So thank you. And Jim, you have your hand up. Go.
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure that we formally directed the administration to make all of our other policies, make the adjustments or recommend the adjustments to make them compliant with the policy we just passed.
Yes, thank you. And that will certainly be our agenda. Again, Gina and I and Karen Fisher-Anderson and Kathleen have been working on the agenda for the September 16th policy meeting. And I think that absolutely we can direct the administration to do all of the training that we heard about, and they will do that. But the changes of the policies is really a board function. So we'll do that in September as well. But certainly, we are looking forward to hearing the recommendations of the changes that need to be made. And I know that Karen talked about that at our July 29th meeting. She's already looking at what changes need to be made. So yes, thank you for
Excellent.
circling
I think
back to
that's
that. Yeah.
I think excellent. Thank you. I think that's an excellent, a good time, a very. So thank you very much.
Yep. Great. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I have nothing further on the agenda unless there's anything.
Can I
to talk
just
about?
want to make one comment.
Yep, Tom, go ahead.
Just, I want to thank Lyndon and Kathleen for the weekly superintendent's reports, particularly as it pertains to their putting in the upcoming meetings. That very helpful now that we're not together all the time. Paper trail, we don't have our paper calendars anymore. So it's very helpful, and I just want to say thanks.
Yes, great. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Lyndon. And again, as a reminder, I said this at the beginning, but all of the monthly board meeting business that did not occur on August 3rd, we will be conducting a meeting on August 17th, and we'll get to all of that business. And that will be posted on the website, and we will take public comment, and there'll be an agenda posted later this week. Okay. I'm waiting for a motion to adjourn.
I would so move that notion.
So moved by Tom. Is there a second?
Second from Jim.
Seconded by Jim. And all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned. at
Thank you.
6:29
Thanks,
PM.
everyone.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Karen.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
You too.
you.
Good night.